Morning, Intuitives. As you can tell by how I'm dressed, I'm getting a video in before I have to head off to work. It's going to be hot today. Welcome new subscribers, and thanks for taking the time to listen to some nobody talk about things. And I'm always enjoy hearing feedback of how my videos helped. That's the reason I bother to do this. Put myself in front of a camera, even though I'm not the kind of person who's into that sort of thing, because a lot of what I'm saying, I want to give this information to people because it's information I wish I had 15 years ago. You've heard me say that before. The video I want to get into today kind of encompasses most of the things I talk about on this channel. It's going to be a bit controversial. Might piss some people off. Hey, if you want to look into what I'm going to say, look into it, but the context of everything I'm going to say, I just feel that somebody needs to say it. So I'm going to say it because I'm a nobody with nothing to lose, so what the fuck are they going to do to me? And it's titled The INFJ versus the Narcissistic Baby Boomer. And of course, you've heard me in part talk about that before. Now, why am I talking about the INFJ versus the Narcissistic Baby Boomer? This can be in a lot of different areas. For one, I'm talking politics because as INFJs, we're idealists. We're not motivated by fame or greed, material things, keeping up with the Joneses, things of that nature. We're motivated by truly making the world a better place and making the world work for at least, the vast majority of people, as many people as possible. There is no such thing as a perfect system that works for everybody, but certainly there are systems better than the system we have, neoliberal corporatism, that works for more people than it doesn't work for, which that is not what we have now in, the vast majority of the Western world. Although when I'm going to start talking about politics, I mainly mean the United States, and to a lesser extent the United Kingdom, because there's a lot of the same shit going on. We tend to influence each other politically quite a bit. You gave us Thatcherism, so we said, fuck you, here's Clintonism. But, yeah. So, and we're the ones, INFJs and ENFJs too. ENFJs, pay attention to this video. I mean you too. And when I mean you too, I mean you're the ones who need to be the faces of this going out and, actual talking. We'll whisper in your ear behind the scenes and remind you that you're allowed to say no, but you're the ones with more charisma than the people. You need to be the leaders. We'll be the lieutenants. I've said that before too. So what I mean by, INFJs and ENFJs, we question the status quo, like the idea of tradition for tradition's sake, and that's the way we've always done it, and oh, you can't question the old boys club. Fuck that. It's like, no, let's, like venerate the old boys club. It's like, how about we barricade the doors and set fire to the motherfucker? That sounds better, because it's a cancer upon the world, a boil that needs to be lanced, a relic of the past. So, and that seems to be a problem in the modern era, although people are questioning this neoliberal corporatist status quo that has been in place since the 1980s. And by and large, it is INFJs and ENFJs to an extent leading that charge. But of course, there's great resistance. And where is that great resistance coming from? Well, predominantly the narcissistic baby boomer. People like Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Theresa May, Nigel Farage, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. Yeah, they're the ones that want to keep things the way they are and will try to convince you that change is not possible and that the way the status quo is perfect and unquestionable, and you must fall in line behind it. Now, why did they say that? Because all of these people have benefited greatly from this corrupt status quo, as did the majority of that generation. This corrupt status quo that they created, and I've talked about it at length in other videos. I'm not going to get into the details of neoliberal corporatism and what it's done to society and the middle class and the working class and unions and tax rates and all that. But, please watch those videos to understand the details. But I'm big picture here. So what that system has done is it sold out what was, commonly known as the American dream for people born after 1964, starting with Generation X, that a lot of people forget about, but I don't forget about you, Gen X. Hi, Gen X. Stand with us, Gen X, because together we outnumber the boomers, because they're dying. Even though they think they're forever young, they're dying. Not fast enough. As the Scottish economist who's now a professor at Brown University said, the world gets better one funeral at a time. And he understands the plight of the working class better than Moses. He's from as he described it, a ghetto of Glasgow, where if it had not been for the system that was in place when he was growing up, pre-Thatcher, he would have ended up either in jail or in the army. His words. So, the boomers don't want this system to change, and we have to be the ones to stand up, regardless of their threats of catastrophe. The reason they don't want it to change is for a lot of reasons. One, they never have enough. So for narcissistic baby boomers, it's always about them. They expect to be the center of attention until the day they die, and they think anything they think, anything that is coming from them is anointed from God. Like, it's to be cherished and unquestionable. It's written in stone. They're Moses carrying it off the mountain. Like, if they say, like basically, to give an American example, the Democratic Party should always be a cult of personality of Bill Clinton, because to them, Bill Clinton is some infallible God, when he is a horrible, horrible, horrible person who should be in jail. He really should. But, of course, he's not, because he's a, rich, charismatic, powerful baby boomer. Typical good old boy, who made his career about, my mama and I was poor. Now, what I didn't tell you was that was only for 1 year, until my mama married a man with a Cadillac dealership. And I tried to act like I had it rough growing up, but really, I was 2 years old that year, and I don't even remember it. That's the reality. Yeah. Bill Clinton, apparently, he had one rough year when he was a toddler that he can't even remember. How many of you have had a rough, decade and a half? But, and not, and not for lack of trying or doing what the all-knowing boomer gods told you to do. Go to college. It's an investment. When I mean investment, it's a good investment for people my age to give you loans, because it makes us rich. So, yeah, but I've gotten into the whole, paying triple what my father paid to go to the same state university in inflation-adjusted dollars. Back to the big picture. So, they don't want us to question the status quo, because A, they think if it's coming from them, it's perfect. B, this corrupt system, which in America anyway, is essentially oligarchy. We have legalized bribery, money equals speech. I've talked about this in other videos. They've made a fortune off of this system. Nancy Pelosi, over $100 million. She's doing insider trading right now. Well, technically her husband, but how the fuck do you think he's getting that information? Gee, could it be because his wife is the Speaker of the House, sitting there refusing to do anything to help the American people, while stuffing her own pockets and making excuses and platitudes, half in the bag, whether it's false teeth swimming in her mouth. Joe Biden good, and Trump bad, and people don't want to change, and I'm a master legislator and the greatest fundraiser that ever lived. So that's what we're up against, and they've benefited off of the system. They're in the club. They don't want the club to end, because, well, if the club ends, then the club gets exposed. And if the club gets exposed, then their all-important self-image, which is really one of the most, if not the most important thing the narcissistic baby boomer cares about, is their self-image, how they're viewed, how people idolize them and think they're great. And this, the lie that they try to portray themselves as some great person. If the truth comes out, that image is forever shattered. Their legacy is shit. And that's just their own image, but also it would expose just how corrupt their system, neoliberal corporatism, has been, and how destructive it's been for essentially the Western world for the past roughly 40 years. And they don't want that. That's why they're doing everything in their power to claw onto power, to stay in, even half demented, like, like Joe Biden, who, let's be honest, I don't care what your political leanings are. I'm a progressive, but let's just be honest. Joe Biden is a demented walking death rattle. It's no different than what Ronald Reagan was from 86 to 88. It's no fucking different. But, they make excuses because he's in the club and because, you know, Joe is the typical backslapping good old boy. They know he'll maintain their precious Clintonite status quo a little bit longer while hopefully lasting long enough for them to die off and not have to worry about the truth coming out. And it's just the smugness of these people of like, well, who are you to question our system? You have to fall in line behind what we say. Like, look, bad stuff over here, that'll happen. We're slightly less bad, so you must fall in line. You don't owe them fucking anything. If they refuse to give fair primaries, that's another thing they're doing to rig the fucking game, is they're like, oh yeah, you can't challenge incumbents. You must accept our status quo corporatists. No. No, we don't. No, we don't. They're basically not even trying to, like, we don't have to give you anything. We're going to guilt you into voting for us because Trump's scary over here. But really, is Joe Biden any fucking better? Honestly, I don't care what comes out of his demented mouth. I care about the policies he's doing to make the country a better place. And what he's doing is fucking nothing. Nothing. The executive order pen has not come out, and he has both houses of Congress, and he's done nothing. So, as bad, yeah, Trump is worse. How much worse? How much worse is honestly very, very debatable. I don't think it's very much, because this is Segregation Joe. I mean, this is the guy. We have the guy in now. The guy that they're praising as the savior to Trump voted for continuation of busing segregation, wrote the fucking crime bill, was for NAFTA, for the Bush tax cuts, against single-payer health care, against student debt relief. What the fuck is he for? What is he for that Republicans are against? I don't know. Nothing. Not a damn thing. And the only reason he doesn't send out mean tweets is because he's too fucking demented to do it. I'm telling you, I met the man once years ago. He is creepy as shit. He was just a senator from Delaware at the time. But he made some interesting comments about the, girls my age that I was there at this event with. And this was when we were in college. This was 2006. It was a regional fundraiser for Bob Casey Jr. because he was going up against theocratic Rick Santorum. If you don't know who Rick Santorum is, he's basically Ted Cruz before Ted Cruz. So, anyway, that is the narcissistic baby boomer system that we're going up against. And that's just one of the points I wanted to make. I'm not going to spend this whole video talking about politics because a lot of people don't like it when I do that. But they fear the truth. They know we know. And that's the other thing. That is why, I'll add this last point about politics. That is why the establishment Democrats are getting so desperate. They know we know. They know the jig is up, and they're doing everything in their power to maintain the status quo for just a little bit longer until they start dying off en masse. Now, dealing with narcissistic baby boomers, you see this culturally, even like in a microcosms of where you live, whether it be in local government or just local leaders. They want to prevent any progressive change from happening in that area, because what the narcissistic baby boomer wants is for the present world to be an homage to their nostalgia, to be, some nostalgic reboot of their good old days, which simply just prevents, future good days for younger generations. But in their mind, the younger generations only exist to serve them, because as they see themselves, they are like, as I said, these anointed from God, almost godlike figures that know all, be all, everything they do is right, everything they touch turns to gold, everything they say is so righteous and profound and unquestionable. But that's what they want, and that's why they'll prevent any positive change, because it's more, what's not important is for the vast majority of people in whatever country you live in to have a better life. What's more important is for the baby boomer not to feel uncomfortable, because, they're nostalgia for primarily the 60s, 70s, and 80s. A lot of times it's the 80s, because that's when a lot of them were, you know, stuffing money hand over fist into their pockets while ripping off the future of future people in that country. But they don't care, or selling the government to the rich, because, but hey, they got $300 in tax cuts for coke money, and or that $300 went to a golden cocaine spoon. That's how much fucking excess there was in the 80s. The baby boomers, literally, there were catalog ads for gold drug paraphernalia. Yeah. How narcissistic do you have to be to need a fucking gold spoon to snort coke with? I don't know. And I've known some cokeheads, and they didn't have gold spoons. But a lot of them were like people who actually had to work for a living. Yeah. But anyway, that's what they want. They don't want anything to change. They want what makes them comfortable to continue, no matter what it costs for the country, for future generations, as long as they get to feel comfortable, and to feel like that their era was, of course, the greatest. Like, in the boomer mind, the 60s, 70s, and 80s were the true Renaissance. That was the greatest Renaissance of all time. That's when music was the greatest, everything, because it was from them. Anything they experience, what they feel, they think, is by definition the best and should be venerated as such, and of course unquestioned. And that's what we're up against. That's the system in a nutshell that INFJs and ENFJs have to strain our integrity to the max to call out, because you will be slandered, bribed, and tons of other things if you try to call this system out. It'll take your bravery to the fucking max to call out this system, because it's so entrenched and so powerful and has such a fucking huge war chest behind it. But that is what must be done. The good news is that as INFJs and ENFJs, we're very authentic and good at bringing people together. The one thing that the narcissistic baby boomer, well, two things that they don't have on their side. One, they don't have the numbers anymore. They don't. And two, time. They don't, their time's running out. They're getting pretty fucking old. We all get old. Even though they refuse, 60's the new 40 and all that, the reality is they're getting fucking old. So, if we can band, groups of people together, as I've mentioned in other videos, from all different backgrounds and age groups, to say enough is enough with this corrupt system and vote it out, they don't have the numbers anymore to maintain it, especially because their numbers dwindle every year as more and more die out. But more people, especially those with notoriety, fame, and prominence, need to start calling it out. The last election, a lot of people, and rightfully so, said, oh, Biden's better than Trump. How could you, you got to get Trump out. But none of those fucking blue check, celebrity people said, hey, how the fuck could you let Joe Biden win the primary? How, with all these choices, we ended up with Joe motherfucking bus segregation, NAFTA loving, crime bill writing, demented walking death rattle, Dixiecrat Biden? Nobody asked that question. Why? Because Joe Biden is the epitome of the baby boomer old boys club, and in their eyes, they are unquestionable and to be worshipped. I don't think so. I hope many of you don't think so. So, trust your intuition if you think you can pull people together to call shit like this out. Don't sell out your integrity to the old boys club, no matter what they offer you. It's just a lie anyway. You weren't born in the club. You're just a useful pawn of the club, and they'll just exploit you and eventually eliminate you one way or the other, whether figuratively or literally.